All right, and we are live. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. My name is Bruce Burke, and this is the Business Buddha podcast, where we dive into the secrets and spirituality of your favorite entrepreneurs. Today, I have a very special guest. Her name is DiAngelo, and she is actually a trademark attorney, and she also owns her own firm. She's an entrepreneur, and she's a fascinating individual. So we're going to get into her background and some of the things that she's done in order to get to where she is. If you're listening to this, please subscribe on the YouTube channel as well as our Facebook page. We'll give those links in the description below. But without further ado, Erica, why don't you say hello?
Hi, Bruce. Thanks for having me.
So I wanted to. I've given you. I've described your background. Do you and what you do? Do you want to describe what you do?
I would agree with that. I'm a business and trademark attorney. I help entrepreneurs and business owners, and I do what I do so that they can focus on their passions and being an entrepreneur and make sure that they're protected along the way.
So one of the reasons I thought you were a perfect guest for this show is that you practice in trademark. Can you just give a brief explanation of what that is and why the average person who has a small business should care about it?
Yeah, definitely. And the simplest way to put it is a trademark is a brand. And that can mean a word, a name, a logo. It can even be a sound or a scent. But what it is an indicator of the source of products or services. So the overarching brand is typically a business name, but businesses also have product lines or additional service offerings that are kind of their own brand within the overarching brand. Those are also trademarks.
So you said a scent. You can trademark a scent?
Yeah, Play-Doh is a trademark. The scent of Play-Doh.
Really? Wow, that is super interesting. I did not know that. Are there like other scents that are like I always think of the smell when you walk into Subway. It's a very strong smell. Like,
well, I think that comes from the sandwiches. But certain hotel chains have scents. When you walk into any of their hotels, no matter where in the world, it'll have the same scent. And so that's trademarked like that as well.
So wait, how do you apply? Sorry to get really on this topic, but like, how do you apply for a trademark on a scent? Do you have to send in a platter of a smell, or how do they know what your smell is?
Well, actually, you're getting a little bit beyond me. I've never applied for a scent.
Okay, that's it. That's the next podcast.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we just get into your background a little bit? I want to have people understand. So you obviously you went to law school for 3 years.
Of course.
Correct. And what was your undergrad in?
My undergrad was Media Communication Studies.
Okay. And you currently own your own firm, correct?
That's right.
And how long did you practice before you did that?
Less than a year. About 10 months before I opened up my own practice. It definitely wasn't planned that way, but sometimes opportunity presents itself and you got to run with it.
So for someone who's listening to this who is let's say, thinking about going to law school, or especially a female who's thinking about going to law school or starting their own firm, do you have any words of advice for them or
For sure.
comments on how that happened?
Well, I would say those are two separate questions. So if you haven't gone to law school yet and you're thinking about going to law school, I would caution people that it might not be exactly what you think, and that is definitely what I encountered. We can go more into how...
Very true.
Yeah, it's definitely different. So unless you have like a specific niche or some sort of passion that you really want to go to law school for, I would caution you to do your research. Ask people who are in it what work looks like on a daily basis. Not this overall theory of, yeah, you get to passionately help clients and implement strategies for your argument. That's not really what it boils down to. So I would just say, be cautious. But the second part of your question is more about somebody who's already an attorney, right? They've already gone to law school, or maybe they're, halfway through it, they're already committed. What are they going to do now? There are so many resources available now to help solo and small businesses, small law firms specifically, get started. I think that it's totally feasible. It's not easy, and you don't have any built-in mentors like you do if you start out at another firm. So it's a challenge, but I think if it's something that you are committed to and you're ready to put in the effort, put in the time, and realize that it's not going to be all like rainbows and butterflies and glorified like a lot of entrepreneurs make running a business sound, then I think you should give it a shot.
Mm-hmm. And do you do, as a solo practitioner, do you do all your own like scheduling and phone calls or whatever? Or do you have somebody helping you?
I have a small team, and I'm growing the team, thankfully. So right now I use an answering service, and I don't know how I ever got by without the answering service. My phone's ringing constantly, so it's hard to get any work done if you're, taking the calls. So I have the answering service. It's like really systematic. They get people onto my schedule only when I have blocked off them to be able to put them on my schedule so we can return the calls. I have an assistant, and I have some more part-time support people for various things, but we are hiring our first full-time person to start.
Oh wow!
In
Congratulations!
A couple months. Yes, thank you.
You're welcome to discuss, some of the services that you provide if you want to, but we can get into that later.
Sure.
Let's go back a little bit more into your personal daily life as an entrepreneur and someone who owns their own firm. Do you have everybody's into like what Bill Gates does in the morning, or what Elon Musk does. So like, what's your thing? Like, what do you do in the morning to get ready? What do you eat for breakfast, etc.?
I love that question. It's evolving, right? It's like, got to find what works for you, what makes sense. I've kidded myself trying to get to the gym at 5:30 in the morning and start my day. That's just not going to happen for me. Not yet, anyway. I do it in the evening. So for me, I like to take my time waking up. I typically eat eggs for breakfast that are pre-made. We do egg cups. We bake them in a pan, so we have them for the week, heat them up in the microwave for 30 seconds. I eat a pretty healthy diet, and most of the time, absent the holidays, I am on the keto diet. So I eat eggs in the morning pretty much every day. And I have recently, over the past month or so, implemented a book. It's called 2-Minute Mornings. It was a gift, and it's basically, you write down 3 things you're grateful for, what you're going to focus on, something you're going to let go of, and it's a really great way to start my day. And I've also incorporated a morning journal. I haven't been as consistent as I would like to be, but I really think that it's been helpful. And being an entrepreneur, and especially certain times of year, you just get swamped and overwhelmed, and you really just need to take that time to focus on the good things, and to let go of the things that you can't control and you're hanging on to. And then the journaling also has really helped me to just guide my day and be like, what am I hung up on? What do I really need to focus on? And it just kind of like gets all these thoughts going on in my head, which a lot of entrepreneurs have this issue. It's like a mile a minute, these things are racing around my head. So putting it onto paper has been helpful as well. And I'm trying to be more consistent, but again, I'm not good at mornings, so.
It's funny you say that, because I was watching, every self-improvement book that you ever read always goes on and on about how important it is to write your goals down and have goals, and it gets to the point where you read so many of these books and it becomes cliche, and you just gloss over it like it doesn't matter, but it does matter. And I was watching some old clips of Steve Jobs, who's a brilliant man, and he was going on about how like it is very important to have vision. That's what goals are, vision. And there has to be someone, and like when you get to CEOs at major companies, that has to be continually reminding the organization of what the vision is. So it's not a matter of just writing them down or having them. It's like continuously pursuing them, coming back to them. And the lack of that is when you stray and you forget and you, like you said, go on tangents. And
I 100% agree with all of that. So you're kind of touching on a lot of things in there. So like writing down your goals, it gives you sort of the long-term focus. Like, why am I doing this? Where am I going? The vision is something that I still struggle with, where I want to, I want to see it more clearly, because if it's not clear, if it's just this vague vision, then it's going to be harder to put in the pieces and all the smaller steps and the shorter term goals to get there. So that's another reason why I've incorporated journaling, because I want to be more clear on what it is that my big picture looks like, because there's a million different ways to get to where you want to go, and you got to figure out what works for you. And if you start seeing themes reoccurring over and over, well, it could be maybe that's where you need to focus on, or it could be, wait, that's something that's continuously stressing you out or not working for you. Maybe you need to get rid of that. So for sure, I agree. Any book you read from these amazing entrepreneurs, they'll tell you the same thing. And one of my favorite books is Think and Grow Rich. And I, was hesitant to read it or buy into it for a long time because of the title. Like, you're not just going to think and money is going to pour into your bank account. Like, that's not how it works. But it really breaks down how important visualization is, and manifestation, and like really calling in the infinite intelligence to help guide you and help you make that plan to get to your goals. I think writing it down is just not optional. It's mandatory, if you ask me.
Right. Totally agree with that. So you said the 2 Minute Mornings book is good. Any other books that you think are good to read?
Oh my gosh. Well, if we're talking strictly about business, I would say the what would I just mention? Think and Grow Rich is probably like super foundational in my opinion. 4-Hour Work Week is awesome because there's a lot of practical advice, stuff you can implement.
Oh, I'm a huge
Tim Ferriss?
Tim fan, yeah, and I've read a lot of his stuff. So
I like that one too, and it's kind of the opposite, right? So Think and Grow Rich is more, there's actionable items, but I would say it's more conceptual and theoretical, where 4-Hour Work Week is like, no, you need to do this. Like the email tips, you shouldn't be checking your emails all day throughout the day. And once I took off my email notifications at the bottom of my computer screen, game changer. Just little things like that.
I did that recently. I was against reading my emails on my phone for a long time because I thought it, and actually I one time I had an Apple Watch, and I was lucky enough to break it because I didn't want to buy, so I smashed the thing against the wall, and then I refused to buy another one because I was this is too expensive. I broke the other one, I want to break the next one, but I just don't like the sensation of someone tapping me on the wrist like those notifications you get. It bothers me. It took me away from like my zen or my concentration during the day.
What I find, and it's kind of funny, I didn't even realize I was doing it. I wear an iWatch every day, and I find myself just subconsciously just taking it off and putting it next to the computer in the middle of the day. I don't even notice it, and then later on I'm like, where's my watch? And I just took it off. So that's probably why.
Yeah, I mean, we're trending into this, everything's smart now. Everything has to have Bluetooth in it, and you have to have a television that's telling you what to do, and a phone, and then a computer, and then a smart speaker, and we're just, the notifications everyone's getting every day is increasing, but it's not necessarily a good thing. And
it's like overload. Yeah. I mean, I can't even look at my phone without having 100 new emails from various accounts.
Yeah, I don't know if you know who Gary V is, but
of course.
Okay, so I was watching something that heard Gary V said something recently. He's like, we're so lazy now that we would rather mark an email as read than unsubscribe, because that's how fast the society moves now. So I've tried to realize that and actually unsubscribe from all these emails that I get, because I don't want that to be true, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's accurate.
So, okay, so I know what you do in the morning. Do you have a bedtime routine?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I need my 8 hours. Again, like, not
Okay.
a good morning
Oh,
person.
I wanted to say, so you said that you like the getting up in the morning. So I cannot get up in the morning because of my daughter. Because my daughter, essentially that decision is made for me because my daughter, I have to put my daughter to sleep, and like she won't go to sleep unless I'm physically there most of the time. So, and then she wakes me up in the middle of the night. So, the only time I really have the opportunity to exercise or do something like that is when she goes to sleep. So if I'm exercising in the gym at like 11, I'm certainly not waking up at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. So I think for people that have, I know there's this like glory now of like waking up in the morning, but like there's other ways you can do it, that don't involve.
It's not one size fits all, and it's not going to determine your success by getting up early. Like, I just don't believe in that.
Yeah. Who's your role model, essentially, or idol? It can be either in, you probably don't have a legal one, I'm guessing, but like a business one or professional.
Well, there's actually another trademark attorney who's really, I guess, helped me with my career as a trademark attorney. She's taught me a lot, and I think she's really awesome. Her name is Sonia Lockney, and besides that, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I read a lot of books. It's really hard for me to say there's like one person out there, one role model. I would say recently, there's a business coach named Kayla Kraft, and she's not at all like into the legal. There's probably not a lot of lawyers who follow her. She started off actually as an ER nurse, and then she got into MLM, but then she's turned it into an actual business and business coaching, and a lot of it has to do with mindset. So it really resonates with me, and I just love listening to her podcasts.
So let me name drop for a second now. So one of my biggest people that I admire is actually dead. His name is Alan Watts. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he is, and the reason I bring that up because we were talking before the show, part of the premise of this podcast is the spirituality and connecting with business people and understanding that when you're successful in business and in life for that matter, you have a good balance of work-life balance, and you don't necessarily want to sacrifice your health or your mental state to your job or your profession, and that's not necessarily a good life, even if you do become successful, if you're working so much that you can't go to the gym and eat healthy and get a good night's sleep and help yourself. So the reason I mentioned Alan Watts is he's a deceased, he was a Japanese / Middle Eastern philosopher, and like any time that I sort of get in a bad mood or something, I like to listen to him. There's a ton of stuff on YouTube, and he really sort of helps you, become conscious and understand that all the negative thoughts that you have in your head are coming from a bad place, and he helps you essentially become present and focus on your breathing so that you can ignore all this sort of negative energy that everybody sort of interacts with on a day-to-day basis. So
I totally agree that it's with all of that, but specifically that success isn't just determined by the money in your bank account or how big is this business you've created or something like that. It's a number of things, because if you have all this money but you had to neglect your family members, or you couldn't, you never found a wife or husband or whatever it is that you want, and you're, overweight and sick now and all these things, well, what's the point of all the money? I mean, it seems like all that work for nothing, in my opinion.
Exactly. So let's shift a little bit more to the trademark aspect. So I'm aware, I'm sure as you are aware, that I'm willing to bet that most people listening to this who have a small business or they have an idea for a business, trademarking something isn't one of the first things they do. it's on the back burner maybe for companies that get a little bit bigger, they get nervous. Um, and there's a lot of services out there, like I'm sure, like LegalZoom, for example, which is, you know, LegalZoom is what it is, but obviously if you want more specialized legal work, maybe it's not the best service. So, explain to like a small business owner, like let's say they have a logo, a brand, a name. Why would they need to work with someone like you as opposed to either A, not getting a trademark at all, or B, going online and clicking a button to the cheapest service and getting the a cookie cutter service?
So, great question. Well, first, every business has a trademark. Whether it's registered or not is another question. So, every business has at least a name. And they probably have a lot of sub-trademarks that they're not even thinking about. If they have a slogan they use a lot, or a specific, very unique hashtag maybe they use on social media to identify their brand, their logo. So a lot of things can be considered trademarks. But the reason you'd want to get a trademark registered from the beginning is the best time to get it. It's not as unreasonably expensive as a lot of people might think. But you're really putting yourself at risk if you don't get it from the beginning, because in trademark law, it's priority and time. So if you start investing into your name, you start getting your goodwill, which is probably the most valuable asset for most small businesses in today's age, right? You want people to recognize your name, you want people to be familiar with your services, and you want to represent consistency in the level and quality of your services or your products. I mean, it goes either way. Yeah, I've used services and products interchangeably a little bit here. But when you're spending all that time and money investing into your brand name, only to risk somebody else pops up and applies for the same or a similar trademark, they have priority, and they can tell you, even if you were there first, stop using that name. You need to start over, you need to rebrand, and if you don't, you're subject to damages. And I think you touched on a very common myth, like, hey, I'm not a big dog, why do I need a trademark? Well, it doesn't matter how big you are. Somebody who just opened yesterday can apply for a trademark tomorrow and put you out of business, even if you've been doing it for however long. It doesn't matter if you didn't get your trademark. So that's one of the biggest reasons that I think you need to get it from day one. I understand as a small business owner myself, and getting started with a business, there's a lot of expenses, and it's like, well, what I have to prioritize. If I don't invest into, let's say, marketing, well, then I have no money to spend. So I get why people have those reservations, but this is really the foundation of a business is your brand, and it needs to be protected.
Because it sounds like what you're saying is people could get an idea for a company, and perhaps they buy a domain name, perhaps they start trying to get the name on social media and all these things, and then maybe they start making t-shirts and all the other kind of things you do, and then they come and talk to you and you say basically they have to start over. Right. Because the name or the logo or the brand they chose isn't protected, or someone else is using it.
Right. So what you really want to do first, before you buy the domain name, before you invest anything into your business, you really want to get a clearance search done. And a lot of people think clearance search means going to your Secretary of State website and seeing if the LLC is available. Or some people even go to the trademark website and they type in the word that they want to use, right? The name of the business they want to use. But that's not accurate. So here's an example. If you type in Ray-Ban, R-A-Y-B-A-N, into the search bar on the Federal Trademark website, nothing comes up for Ray-Bans. That's because there's a dash in Ray-Ban, R-A-Y-ban, right? So you would have thought, oh, sure, I can get Ray-Ban, cool. Right? Now, everyone knows Ray-Ban, so nobody's going to make that mistake, but when we're talking about the millions of trademarks that exist and all the businesses who are out there, and you've probably never heard of most of them, you could be accidentally infringing on a name. And so what we do And what most trademark attorneys will do is a more comprehensive search using advanced technology, a database that gets pulled from the Federal Trademark Office, from overseas, all over the place to really, and it searches different spellings and combinations, right? Things like you would be there for an infinite amount of time if you tried to, add a letter at the end here and add a dash here. There's a million ways that you can spell a name or change it around. So without a search, you just could be accidentally infringing. So that's where you want to start. Best practices, that's where you want to start, so you don't invest into a name that you're ultimately not going to be able to get protected or have to change.
Understood. Super important. So we live in a world where people are trying to, which is sometimes a good thing, where people are turning to the internet to do searches and see if they can do things themselves before they hire a professional. For example, that applies to myself with cars. Like, I actually have been learning a lot about cars and trying to be an amateur mechanic, mostly based off of YouTube videos and stuff I find online, because that's an example of where it's good, because I have found, now that I know a little bit about a car and how much it costs to do like an oil change or spark plugs or the brake fluid, etc., when I go to a mechanic and they tell me how much it is, and I'm sort of like, well, or they recommend repairs that are probably not necessary. So why can't the average person who's listening do exactly that with trademarks?
So you actually do not have to have an attorney to file a trademark in it. You can go on there and file it for yourself. The problem is the trademark process is typically about a year-long process, and meanwhile you're getting your business going, you're investing. But if you make a mistake that can't be fixed, then you have to start the process over. There are situations where there is no fix, there's no amending it, there's no changing it if you did it wrong to begin with. The alternative is, well, maybe you did try it, and I get a lot of clients like this where they filed it themselves and they ended up with a refusal, and now they come to me and it costs more for me to make an argument and try to overcome their refusal than it would have just starting with an attorney from the beginning. There's also, I don't know what the statistic is, but your likelihood of actually getting your trademark registered when you use an attorney is much higher than trying it on your own. And the third one, I would say there's a strategy involved in trademarks, and that's something that LegalZoom can't replicate. LegalZoom is a form, so you can certainly, especially with trademarks, LegalZoom's a big waste of money. I actually had a client call me yesterday and tell me, I filed with LegalZoom, I'll never use them again. I'm like, thank you, music to my ears. But the thing is, LegalZoom is a form. Well, the trademark application is a form. So why are you paying LegalZoom for a form when you can just fill out the form yourself on USPTO? I'd rather people file it themselves and pay LegalZoom. But another reason that you'd need an attorney for the trademark is the strategy involved. So what does the future of your business look like? If you're just selling yoga pants right now, but you want to move from yoga pants into supplements, well, we have to make sure that you're going to be able to get both of those things covered. And do we need to get that covered now or later? Like, how soon are you going to implement supplements into your business plan? There's a lot of variables and strategy that's involved in making sure you get the broadest protection and the lowest risk, and then ultimately getting it registered.
So what's the downside if someone's listening to this thinking, well, I'm just going to ignore all of this and I'm just going to do whatever I want to do? Like, can you describe, I know part of the process is they could get a cease and desist letter, essentially. Can you describe what that would be like and what that would mean for them?
Sure. So actually, I'll use an example, if that's okay. There's some examples of local businesses that have gone through this, and one of them, there was a guy, he had a food truck for years, and he wanted to open up a restaurant. So he decided that he was going to open it up, and another business in town had a beer that had a similar name as the name of the restaurant this guy wanted to open. So the guy decides that he's going to open the restaurant anyway. He puts up the signage, promotes it. He already has somewhat of a presence in the community because he had his truck for so long. And anyway, day one, he opens the door, his grand opening. boom. Well, he already got a cease and desist and ignored it because they knew it was coming. But then, boom, he got hit with the trademark infringement lawsuit day one. So he had to, everything he put into it to get it open and launching, all in the trash. He had to rebrand, change the name, and go through that whole process. Now,
so it's not just getting a letter; you can actually get sued.
oh yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's one of the reasons that companies get trademarks so that they can enforce it, right? You want to be able to enforce other people from stopping, against them using the same mark as you, because it's about your reputation. If you open a company and another company has the same name and they're confusingly similar, well, if they suck, people are going to think that you do too, right? They're going to be confused. They're not going to know which company is the good one and which is not because they're so similar. So part of the benefit of getting a trademark is so you can stop other people from using it. We've talked about this a lot about, well, what if you're on the receiving end? But getting one also puts you on the end of making other people stop, right? Because you want to protect your brand. You're putting the effort into it to make your reputation and build your goodwill. You want to make sure that nobody else is going to screw that up for you.
Right.
But the cease and desist, so yeah, it happens all the time, and there's some trademark bullies out there who, big companies, and they just want to stop anybody who's even remotely close to their name. Sometimes it's not even similar products or services, and they get the cease and desist, and what sucks about the bullies is well, they probably have a lot more money and resources, so do you want to challenge them? If they sue you, do you want to have to hire a lawyer? Even if you're in the right and you think you can win, do you really want to go through that process? They can't do it, though, if you have a trademark. They can't, there's nothing for them to tell you to cease and desist. You own it. But in other instances, people will say, look, sorry, you probably didn't even know about me, but you need to stop using that name. It's too similar to ours, and if you don't, you're going to incur damages. So at that point, you probably want to stop if you're actually infringing because, they could go after you for actual monetary damages.
There's been some stories recently, I can't remember, maybe that celebrities, I think it was one of the Kardashians trademarked a very common phrase, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but we've seen some of that in the news where celebrities are trying to trademark everyday slogans. Or do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I know LeBron tried to trademark Taco Tuesday. That didn't work. He definitely doesn't own Taco Tuesday. But some of those common words, unless you as the celebrity have given it a secondary meaning, and you maybe, I don't know what the Kardashian situation is, but maybe if she was using it in line with her makeup line, and we call this particular product something catchy, maybe she can get it if there's acquired distinctiveness because they have such a big presence and people know it. But other than that, nobody has rights to these common phrases and things that we use on a daily basis.
So for the people that are listening, obviously there's different. A trademark is a form of intellectual property, correct?
That's right.
So, but there are other forms of intellectual property. So can you explain the difference of what a trademark is compared to a copyright or a patent or a trade secret, for example?
Sure. Well, I'll keep it simple. And there's a lot of confusion about this. So a patent is something that you want for an invention, right? That's going to protect, it has to be unique enough to be protectable. But you can't just have a really cool idea and that you want to make an app for or something like that and get a patent on it. It has to be something unique that doesn't already exist, and basically it's an invention. So a copyright is anything that you put into a tangible form. So if you write an article, or you write a book, a blog, whatever, that is copyrighted. Now the thought behind it, the concept of what you're talking about, isn't protected, but the actual wording and the way you wrote it would be protected. Same goes for a painting or a song. All that would be protectable under copyright law. And it's actually, you get some copyright protection the moment that you create it. Whereas trademarks, there is some common law trademark law, but you really don't have any protection unless you get the trademark register. Where common law, you own it, it's yours. Where copyright, you own it and it's yours. The only reason to go ahead and get it actually filed and registered as a copyright is to enforce it. So if it's going to be something big and you won't even be able to sue the other person until you have it registered, that's why you'd want to get your copyright registered. But, and you know, it's actually funny, you can get your copyright registered after an infringement happens, right? Like if you write a book and then somebody starts stealing it, but you never got it officially copyrighted, you can then go get it copyrighted and then sue them. But do you really want to wait around all this time and have somebody else like ripping off your work? Probably not. But it's not as, I would say, for small businesses and, you know, prioritizing funds and where to spend them, trademarks is certainly much more important than copyright, and patent only applies to a very small amount of companies, specifically those with unique inventions.
Great. Cool. So I wanted to discuss briefly the process of someone who's starting a new business or a new venture, like how they go about picking a name and how that fits into the trademark process. So, you know, I always notice names of companies that are, I would say, include misspellings almost. Like if you look at Lyft, for example, Lyft is obviously a play on a lift, the correct spelling of the word, but it's spelled with a Y, or Instacart, or Uber, or Google is misspelled. Google's a name for a number. So are these people, in your opinion, are they like picking names so they can like trademark it from the beginning, or is that part of the process in like picking a business name or picking a website, etc.? And how should they go about doing that?
Yeah. So there's a combination of things, right? You want your branding and your messaging to be a part of the naming process, but you also want the strength of the name to be a part of the naming process. So there's 4 categories of marks, really, or it's like a spectrum of trademarks. And at the bottom, you have generic marks. So like the coffee shop, for a coffee shop, is obviously generic. It's not protectable. Anybody can name the coffee shop the coffee shop. The next kind of category you would have would be descriptive. And if something's descriptive, you know, you're describing a feature of the mark within the name. So what's an example of that? If you're having a real estate, let's just say a real estate company, you know, a real estate brokerage, and you call it, "We sell homes." Well, that's descriptive of what the service is. You're selling homes, right? So you're probably not going to be able to get that trademarked if you can prove that you've acquired distinctiveness and people know it and they associate it with you and, you know, yada yada. There's a strategy to it. You could maybe get it trademarked. But why, you know, I don't know that you would want to do that. So another thing that people do, and because you have to combine your marketing strategy along with your trademark strategy, because both of them matter. You want people to understand what your business is, but you also want your name to be protectable. So if somebody opens South Tampa Realty, I don't know why I'm picking real estate, but if somebody owns South Tampa Realty and then somebody else pops up next door and calls Realtors of South Tampa, well, they can both exist simultaneously, and neither of them can really do anything to each other because their name is so weak that there's no protection there. So you don't really, you know, I know people do that for SEO purposes, or they think, well, you know, you're going to be the premier South Tampa, whatever. But really, you're not doing yourself a favor because you have no ability to protect yourself. If the guy moves in next door is a really bad realtor with bad reputation and customers are confusing the two, well, then your business is going to be damaged because of somebody else because your name was weak. But, you know, the other 2 types of trademark names on the spectrum of quality and protectability would be suggestive marks and then arbitrary and fanciful marks. So what you said, like, I guess this isn't the one you use, Apple would be an arbitrary mark. So an apple has nothing to do with computer, right? But we all know what an apple is. So it's arbitrary. Same for like Camel cigarettes. Camel has nothing to do with cigarettes, or at least it didn't used to until like a trademark. And then fanciful would be these made-up words like Yahoo and Google. And you said, Google Mint number or something. I'm not familiar with that, but
Yeah, it's a Googleplex. It's like I think I don't know the exact number, but it's like 10 to the something power. It's a huge number. That's where the name comes from.
okay.
But it's spelled like GOOG, I think OL. I know I'm going to be corrected by somebody, but it's not spelled the way that the company spells it.
Okay, right. So then we'll just use Yahoo. Yahoo's made up. Nike's made up too, right? They're just made up names. And that's fine, but the downside of having one of those names is just a lot more marketing effort because people aren't going to instantly know what your business is related to. So South Tampa Realty, well, we obviously know it's real estate, but Nike, if Nike didn't already have a brand, if you're starting out day one Nike, nobody knows what it is. So the best one is in the middle, and that's suggestive. So one example would be like picking an arbitrary or fanciful name, whatever you want to call it, and then having like a subtext or a slogan that indicates a feature that you want customers to know. So like let's say you sell space heaters. Your company sells space heaters.
It's a good example.
I don't know where it came from. At least it's not real estate this time. But let's say they sell space heaters. What do you want customers to know? Is it energy efficient? Is it going to keep your toes warm? Like you want it to suggest something so that the consumer gets an idea of what it's going to provide them that is distinguishable from other companies, but you also want it to be unique enough to be protectable. So it's kind of the good combination of having an arbitrary or fanciful or more unique name, but also having something descriptive so people know what it is that they're buying or what they're going to get out of the product or business.
I wanted to ask you about, there's a lot of people probably listening to this who've heard a lot about these business models that are advertised a lot online, like drop shipping or print on demand or Amazon FBA and all these things. And part of the issue with those businesses is or especially if you're interested in creating your own brand or sticking a brand on products that are like originate in like China, for example, there's potentially a risk where, as you probably obviously know, that China doesn't necessarily respect all of our intellectual property laws. So I was wondering if you have any thoughts on people that are interested in any those kinds of businesses and what are the impacts of them. What if they go through this process and they get a trademark and they become a big brand, but then people in China stick their brand on their products that are made there and then sell them, and then what's the point, I guess?
Well, the point is you can stop them from doing it, right? You just have to have all your ducks in a row. So if somebody was to, let's say they want to just white label product, basically they buy, I'll go back to the supplement example. They buy supplements made by a manufacturer. That same manufacturer sends the supplement out to, multiple companies, and they use their own labeling. So what you have there is you're trying to establish your brand, and you're going to sell this supplement under your own brand. So you're building up your brand. But at that point, all you really own, the most valuable part of your business is the brand. So if somebody from China or wherever starts copying your brand, like they get on social media and they create an Instagram account with the same name, and they start, they go on Amazon, they start posting pictures of their supplement, of your supplement or your label at least. There are definitely actions you can take if you have a trademark. And with social media, at least, if you have the trademark, that's when they actually take you seriously, and they'll make other people take their handles down if they're infringing. But if you don't have a trademark, Facebook and Instagram aren't going to do anything for you. Amazon is the same. So if Amazon sees that, well, they're probably not going to see it on their own, but if you notify Amazon that somebody's using your brand and selling them, Amazon has built-in regulations to take care of it. But you can also send the cease and desist notice. You can take legal action, and you can even initiate lawsuits. If somebody in China is selling it in China but not in the United States, and that's where your trademark is, that's a different story. But that's why getting the strategy from the beginning, like, hey, I plan on, expanding throughout the world. Maybe I need to get the United States trademark and then also get trademark registrations in some of these other bigger countries that I'm going to be selling in, so that I don't have a competition problem over there. So there's definitely a lot of ways that you can combat that, as long as you take precautions ahead of time. It's really, really important in branding and in starting a business to be preventative. It's always less expensive to be preventative. And really, worst case scenario, like, it could, if you're not preventative, you could end up with losing your business.
One of the things I wanted to ask you is, we're getting a little bit towards the end now, because I know we don't want to go too long, but one of the things you hear with respect to patents is actually patent trolls, where there's these companies that they're essentially buying patents so that they can bring lawsuits against major corporations, and then the reverse is true. You have defensive acquisition of patents, where companies just buy patents so that they can prevent other people from using technology. Some of the bigger companies like Apple and Google are the main ones that are interested in this. So I'm curious if you've ever heard anything that's similar in the trademark world, where people buy and sell trademarks that they're not necessarily interested in owning the trademark for their own purposes. They just want to use it essentially as a commodity.
Right. Well, that's actually fraud, but it happens. So to get a trademark, you actually have to prove that it's being used in commerce in connection with the goods and services that you applied for. So to get the trademark, it has to be legit unless they submit fraudulent evidence, right?
Well, like, what if I was talking about, if let's say hypothetically it's properly acquired, but they sell it to someone. Like, can you sell a trademark the same way you would sell a patent or...
You can, but you can't just get it like cyber squatters, right? They're like, oh, this sounds like a really good domain name. I'm going to scoop it up and then sell it for a bunch of money. You don't have to really put anything into it. You can just buy it. Whereas a trademark, getting a trademark registered, you actually have to be using it in creating something to sell, right, in connection with that trademark. So I don't think it's as common for people to go through the whole process of getting a trademark and actually selling products and services and just to sell it. That's not something very common. There are trademark bullies, but that's a little bit different. They're not just using it as a commodity. They're overly protecting their own brand and trying to, get smaller people out of business, really. Okay. So it's a little bit different.
Okay. Well, we're about time to wrap up now. I wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to tell people about anything that you have going on, or how people can contact you if they're interested in pursuing a trademark.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you can go on to my website, DiAngeloLaw.com. It's DiAngelo law.com. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all at DiAngelo Law. And if you guys have any questions, you can message me, email me, whatever works.
Okay, and you gave your email, right?
No.
Okay.
My email is erica@DiAngeloLaw.com, ERICA @DIANGELO law.com.
Okay. Well, I wanted to thank you so much for coming on the program. It was very, I think we had a great talk, and I just wanted to point out, I forgot to do this at the beginning, the song that you heard at the beginning of the show is from Sonar. He's my brother. So that is his original song, so you can search more of his songs on YouTube. The spelling is PSOGNAR, like sonar radar, but he's so gnarly. There you go. So that will be the song to take us out, and please tune in to the next episode. Thank you very much for listening. Bye.